I was shopping around for a new Pokémon game when I stumbled upon Pokémon Odyssey, a ROM hack created by Yggdrasil project. From the outside looking in, this seemed like just another fan-made Pokémon game, but oh no my friend, this game is quite the departure from most ROM hacks that you'll see, in the sense that the game isn't focused on a typical linear story with gym leaders, evil teams and Elite Four. Instead, we're met with a proprietary story that's centered around a giant maze-like structure resting below the Yggdrasil tree that looms over the center of the world. You play as Nyx, a voiced protagonist who, along with her newfound companions, partake in a quest set out by the Guild of Talrega to uncover the mysteries of the labyrinth resting below the World Tree. Pokémon Odyssey sets itself apart from mainline games even further by defaulting to double battles, having its own set of regional Pokémon forms, and by featuring quality of life changes such as a difficulty modifier, built-in level caps, as well as a tool to modify EVs and IVs. And before we even start the game, we're told that all Pokémon stats have been modified in order for them to stay relevant and competitive. The game even makes it a point to let us know that even the starters have had their stats buffed. I was a little confused by this at first, since starters are usually the backbone to your party, but then I quickly understood why this was brought up as we start the game off with a Plusle and a Minun. We aren't told much at the start other than the fact that we're joining Talrega's Adventurers Guild, and just like that, we're off. Before we make any progress at all, we come across this house with a Krabby symbol on the front. Stepping inside reveals yet another functionality that sets Odyssey apart: side quests. I've always been of the opinion that Pokemon games are sorely lacking in side quests, and I've never quite understood why they aren't a part of the mainline games. Sure, some of the later iterations will have at most one or two interactions that you could consider to be a side quest, but meaningful rewards and an underlying system to support this have never actually been there. These side quests aren't going to blow your mind or anything, but they do reinforce the moment-to-moment gameplay of Pokemon, namely battling, collecting, and exploring. By having side quests with tangible rewards underpinning these mechanics, it allows for deeper and more thoughtful exploration of them. Perhaps I'm reading into this too deeply, but seeing NPCs with exclamation marks above their heads in a Pokemon game just sets off some sort of chemical reaction in my brain. As we progress through the prologue, we're given just about enough exposition to pique my interest in the story. Our sister, Amy, is a top-ranked explorer with the Guild of Talrega and wants to pass the torch down to us. We don't really know much about what it actually means to explore the labyrinth underneath the World Tree, but if there's wild Pokemon down there, then hell, I'm going. It's also here where we are introduced to our two companions, Olympia and Ethan. Ethan reminds me ever so slightly of Sam from Lord of the Rings. Good at heart and well-intentioned, but perhaps not a suave and assertive main character. Olympia, on the other hand, speaks like a robot. Very literally so. Everything she says reads like a computer log from a program being run. Nyx, our protagonist, is a little harder to place. She very freely speaks her mind and will at some times come across as your typical hard-headed and stubborn main character. I will say though, I was a little taken aback from time to time with just how rude she can come across. Not unlikable, just flawed, and not always in the charming anime protagonist kind of way. In general, I do think that the writing works really well in Odyssey. A lot of ROM hacks suffer from being written by very young and inexperienced designers, which is how you end up with all of the dialogue and character designs looking like Shadow the Hedgehog. We're obviously not looking at Red Dead Redemption 2 levels of writing here, but that's also not needed, nor is it what the writers were going for. The dialogue is brief and snappy, but not so short as to undercook the events taking place. Characters are well defined, but not so boxed in that they become caricatures. If I were to levy criticism against the writing, it would be that the humor can be very hit or miss, oftentimes gravitating closer to misses. This is, of course, very subjective, but a lot of the humor is very millennial, Tumblr post kind of humor. Punchlines are often substituted for lines being written in caps lock, and I keep waiting for jokes about ninjas or bacon or whatever else was typical internet humor 10 years ago. After having been introduced to our main cast, we're in the thick of it, in the game's first stratum, or level, and it is here where the game begins proper. The past few mainline games have gone from a more straightforward linear level design to a more open world approach, and I would say Pokémon Odyssey doesn't exactly fit either category. You progress from level to level, but each level is fairly open and will sometimes include multiple different parts, each with their own story beats to complete. So what do you actually do during the exploration of the stratums? Well, it's mainly your standard fare of Pokemon gameplay. You encounter wild Pokemon, battle trainers, and collect valuable items to further boost your battle prowess. Where the game deviates, however, is in its own regional forms of certain Pokemon. I was surprised to see just how many of them had received a makeover. They've been revamped in looks, types, and movesets. Many of them look absolutely killer and could very well be real regional variants. Take Cubone for example, who has received quite an overhaul, sporting a red color scheme and is sort of a Native American look. In addition to its new appearance, it's also been given a totally new set of moves along with an additional typing, Aether. Aether is a brand new typing that's been given to some of the newly overhauled Pokémon. The typing itself is more of a defensive typing and it's not super effective against any other types, and the moves mostly serve as utility moves where they have secondary effects. Now, not all new original forms are winners though. Frittata looks like a melted gummy rat, and Elekid was given a toupee for some reason. I'm very happy to report though that there's enough new Pokemon to build your team with, many times over. If you are like me though, don't worry, many of your favorites are still here. In addition to the standard catching and battling mechanics of Pokemon games, the Stratums also feature what's known as FOEs. These are souped up overworld Pokemon that will absolutely rock you if you're not careful. They're sort of like totem Pokemon from Sun and Moon or Alpha Pokemon from Legends Arceus. Many of them are patrolling a small area in the Stratum, and others are triggered upon doing certain quests. You are given the option to capture them, but only after beating the Stratum captain of that same floor. You can loosely think of captains as Odyssey's version of a gym leader. You'll find them at the end of the Stratum, sporting a tougher team than most other trainers, and you need to beat them to move on. Now, going deeper and deeper through the Stratums might be the main objective for the game, but there's also an entirely separate part to this adventure, the sea. Similar to how the underground works in Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, the ocean sits as an additional space to explore in Odyssey. It isn't immediately explained to you that this is even possible, but it opens up a whole new host of possibilities. You sail around the sea until you spot an island, pirates, or any other type of event. Some of the wild Pokemon here cannot be found anywhere else, and the islands all have their own set of quests and encounters. I don't want to spoil too much, but just know that there's a lot to discover, and it serves as a really cool way of extending the gameplay of Odyssey. Another important aspect to discuss when talking about ROM hacks is difficulty, as that is one of the main reasons that many folks will gravitate towards ROM hacks. Pokémon Odyssey features 3 difficulty levels, and for the sake of this video I went with the normal difficulty. It's a pretty hefty step above the mainline games, but a far cry from something like Run and Bun or Emerald Kaizo. Since the game also utilizes double battles for everything but wild encounters, there's also a higher degree of strategizing that goes into the gameplay. All in all, Odyssey is an impressive undertaking with an amazing result to show for it. Taking the Pokemon formula and completely recontextualizing it into something this high quality is no easy feat. From my time with the game, I can't say that there are any obvious weak points. Yeah, some of the sprites aren't perhaps perfect, and you might find some of the writing a little grating, but overall I think Pokemon Odyssey managed to punch way above its weight and landed in something very spectacular.